Earth Day is approaching on Sunday, April 22nd, and as we are ready to celebrate that day, we have here today as a special guest. We have Dr. Cindy Evans, who is the Earth Observation Scientist. I think your appropriate title is Associate Space Station Scientist for Earth Observations, correct?
Something like that. It's Space Station Associate Program Scientist for Earth Observations.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming today. And I can see you may not be able to see this on camera, but she has Earth earrings on, and I like that. That's very nice. So, first of all, let's just talk about some of the things that are going. First, actually, before I even get into Earth observations, let's talk about you. So, tell me, how did you become an Earth observation scientist?
Well, I'm a geologist. My training is in geology, and like many geologists, went to school and started taking all sorts of sciences: chemistry, physics, math, and none of them quite fit. And I think the beauty of geology and earth science is that it takes all of those sciences and brings them together. Plus, we do a lot of field work, and it's really fun to be outside and observe the earth firsthand.
Very interesting. And so, when was it that you came to NASA, and how did you come about getting here?
Okay, I've been at NASA now since 1989, and so a long
Long
time.
time.
And of course, my initial interest in NASA, well, I grew up during the time frame. I remember seeing the Apollo missions, but I did apply to be an astronaut, like many people here, and so I had interest in pursuing some way to support the space program, and ended up here working with the Earth Observations Program for many years.
Great, and you do definitely do a good job, I'm sure, of supporting the space program. And being here since 1989, that's a long time. So I know that you're very well versed on what is going on some of those Earth observations. There are, you know, many different studies, and we're going to get into some of those. The first one, I want to go ahead and just talk first about one of the newest studies. It is called ISERV. And I understand it's to study natural disasters and climate change and that sort of thing. You want to talk to me about that?
Right, and stepping back a little bit, there's kind of three things about the space station that are really nice synergies with Earth Day. Number one is that the space station itself, as a platform, is coming into its own as an Earth observing platform, and we have experiments right now on the outside of the space station and on the inside of the space station collecting data every single day. And the newest payload that will be launched at the end of July on the HTV-3 will be the iServe instrument. And if I could talk about that in just a minute.
Sure.
The second thing about the Space Station and Earth Day is that it supports this legacy program called Crew Earth Observation. So the crew is really invested in observing the Earth. And then the third thing is that the Space Station is participating, and all the international partners are participating in this program called ISS Benefits Humanity. And Earth observations is one of the three nodes of the ISS Benefits Humanity program, and we're working with the United Nations on this as well. And the Earth observations participation is specific to collecting data that may be useful for disaster response, recognizing that the space station may be in the right place at the right time to take some observations that may be useful for first responders, or even just communicating anything that's happening on the ground. So our newest payload, which is helping build the space station as an Earth observing platform, is going to be iServe,
Okay.
and its specific purpose is to collect data for humanitarian purposes.
Okay.
And it's a high resolution imager, and it's going to be mounted in the WARF, which is the Window Observational Research Facility, which is the rack that sits right in front of the Destiny's window. And so it'll have, which points right directly down at the surface of the Earth. So it'll have the bird's eye view of the Earth. It's a high resolution camera, and it ties into this program called SERVIR. And SERVIR is a program out of the Marshall Space Flight Center, which is a collaboration between NASA and U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, to provide remote sensing data to developing nations around the world that can use these data for a variety of purposes.
Wow. So, and I understand you mentioned HTV-3. That is the Japanese cargo ship, and it is scheduled to be launched on July 21st. So it'll go up on that cargo ship. And when exactly will the operations on that particular payload begin?
I believe it's set up now for November for the iServe to come online.
Okay. And so I assume that there are going to be the crew members who are scheduled to go aboard the International Space Station. There will be some they've had some sort of training, or how do they learn to use this piece of equipment, or is it a
Right now, actually, I believe our good colleagues at Marshall are putting together the training materials so that the space station crew members can install it in the window. They've had some training in that to begin with as well,
okay?
and so that they will know what to do when they to install the instrument and to have it go through its paces, its checkout. Um, in addition, we do train the crew members in Earth observation so that they know what they're looking for on the surface of the Earth. I don't
Okay,
know if you want to talk about that.
we can talk about that. Sure.
Okay, so that's the other part is that the crew members are in fact involved in looking at the Earth and knowing what they're seeing, and so we do train them to understand the basic Earth processes and also understand something about the dynamicism of the Earth,
Mhm.
so that when volcanoes erupt or tropical storm systems occur over certain areas, um, or watching the seasons change, watching the ice melt right now in the northern hemisphere or the snow buildup in the southern hemisphere. They understand the kinds of things that they need to look for, and they can support their observations that way.
Okay, great. So I want to go into the longest running study that we've had, and it's one of the most popular ones, I believe, of the crew Earth observations. And you mentioned that in the earlier. But before we go into that, I want to go ahead and ask you a question that came to us from Twitter. So this question on Twitter is comes to us from Jay Skiers, Jim. He asked, "What exactly do they study? I guess they don't just admire the planet, although it is lovely."
Okay, so yeah, I started to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, so that the crew members they study specifically um, human impacts on the surface of the earth that they might be able to observe. For example, what does a city footprint look like, and what kinds of infrastructures can be observed? They study specific types of dynamic events and the impacts of those dynamic events. For example, coastlines change after storm systems or after floods, and so they learn how to recognize. They know what kinds of features to look for. Um, they study something about the world's climate and where the glaciers occurs, especially the tropical glaciers, and they study camera techniques so that they know how to most appropriately capture the kinds of data that we request of them. And then we help them every day from the ground by sending them some information.
And you guys, I know actually identify areas because I have today's crew Earth observations that were given to the crew, and so as they have time, they go on. And I understand there are different collection or areas that you guys are interested in. And so for today, we have the capital cities collection. Do you want to go through these real quick and just tell us what we're looking at today?
Okay, so today, and of course, all of the requests are based on where the space station is going to be at a certain time. We can't ask them to photograph something that's on the other side of the world for
Sure.
where they are. So today we've got one of our campaigns is to collect imagery of all of the major cities of the world, and and today they're going to be passing over India, and so New Delhi, which is India's capital, is one of the targets for them. And in some areas, they get very good about recognizing patterns, cultural patterns over different countries in the world. In India, many of the cities are built out of materials that are similar to the countryside, so that the cities don't pop out the same way that they might in the United States, for example, where we use exotic materials. And so we describe to them what Delhi might look like. It's not going to be it'll be a difficult target for them because of the building materials, and we ask them to photograph the whole of the city. The second thing is the city of Kampala, which is the capital of Uganda. It sits right on Lake Victoria, and this is one of the areas that has the fastest growing populations in the world. And because it's a tropical region, sometimes it's hard to take photographs of these cities because it's covered in cloud cover.
Sure. So some from these images that you are getting, when you said it is becoming rapidly populated, are you able to see that population take place from these views that we get?
Well, actually, that's the beauty of having this long-standing program, which in fact goes back to John Glenn in 1962 on his very first orbital flight. He was the first person to take a camera into space. So we have 50 years of looking at the Earth. In some of these places, we do have decades of data so that we can look at an image that was taken today, and we can look at an image that was taken 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and we can compare those two and be able to document the changes and the growth. Yes.
That's fascinating. Thanks.
Okay, the third thing that we're asking the crew members to look at today is a dynamic event. It's a dust storm over the Arabian Peninsula. They're called haboobs. They're seasonal dust storms. You may have heard this word last summer when Arizona was having big dust storms. It was introduced into the North American weather lingo. And these dust storms can be huge, and the dust can travel many hundreds of miles. And so it's a pretty spectacular view for the space station crew members.
And so, why might we be interested in viewing these types of? Is this again the natural disaster?
Well, and this is kind of understanding how the planet breathes,
Okay.
and this is a swing season that is a spring or a fall kind of phenomenon. So being able to understand where the dust storms, where the source of the dust is, how it gets picked up, how thick it is, how far it travels. Does it travel over the city of Riyadh, for example? Is it going to impact people on the surface of the Earth? And just kind of understanding the basic dynamics of these kinds of features, because dynamic events are harder to capture from the unmanned satellites.
Okay. Great.
And the last city that we're asking the crew members to collect is Damascus, the capital of Syria. Of course, Syria's been in the news a lot lately, and but again, it's a city in an area that has rapid population growth, and so we are asking the crew members to take a photograph of the urban area.
Okay. Great. So, share with me real quick what any views that you have seen. What are your favorites that you've seen from?
Well, one of my very favorite views, as a geologist, I like volcanoes and I love volcanic eruptions. And so the crew members have actually sometimes been the first to observe eruptions. And in particular, one of the most spectacular images that was first collected on the space station back in ISS 5 is a view of Mount Etna with a huge eruption plume over the top. And of course, today, Popocatépetl, the volcano that's near Mexico City, is beginning to show signs of unrest. And so those are some of my favorite pictures, are the pictures of volcanoes erupting.
So, I bet you're getting ready to see that other photo of another volcano active.
That's right. If the station orbits allow the crew members to look at that.
Great. Well, and so these images are very, very popular among the public, and we actually have a list, a whole website, that a repository, if you will, of these images that we're taking aboard the International Space Station, and the public can go and look at these at eol.jsc.nasa.gov. Also, we NASA has put together an Earth Day website. You can find a link to that website at www.nasa.gov. The On that, we have a list of the top 10 requested images as well as the top 10 most downloaded images from that particular website. The top 10 most requested images, I actually am wearing a shirt with one of the photos. It's the number one photo. It's the Apollo 17 Earth view. But we are conducting a Twitter poll for the public, so you can get your vote in. Go to that website and vote for your favorite of the top 10. Again, you can go to that at www.nasa.gov. And we really appreciate your time. Do you have any other things you want to share with us about what's going on as far as how we are helping, or how ISS is actually helping with Earth Day and giving back to the Earth?
Well, the crew members, of course, are tuned in, and you've already seen some really spectacular images. Especially one of the new modes of imagery is taking time-lapse images at nighttime to show what the Earth looks like at night, and that's actually a very unique contribution that the space station astronauts can make. So they're excited to participate in Earth Day by observing the Earth, and we have data coming down to the surface of the Earth every day.
Great. And again, you can find those time-lapse videos as well on that website, correct, at eol.jsc.nasa.gov. Thank you again for coming out today. Happy Earth Day, everyone. This is
Happy Earth
Mission
Day.
Control Houston.